My dog came back, but he died 3 years ago. I heard the scratching first, a slow, deliberate scrape against the wood, followed by a faint whimper. I was sitting on the couch, half asleep, when it started. The house was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that only settles deep at night, when even the wind has died down. Then, the knock, not from the front door, not from any door at all. It came from the back, the sliding glass door that led to my yard. I froze. My fingers gripped the armrest as my breath hitched in my throat. No one should have been out there. I lived alone. My closest neighbor was a quarter-mile away. And yet, there it was. A second knock, then a third, slow, rhythmic, patient. I swallowed hard and stood, my body tense as I moved toward the back of the house. Every step felt heavy, like something inside me already knew I shouldn't be doing this. The glass door was fogged from the chill of the night, but through the haze, I saw something familiar, a shape, a shadow. No, a dog. My heart stopped. "Buddy," I whispered, my voice barely more than a breath. The shape wagged its tail. My chest tightened as a wave of impossible, crushing emotion slammed into me. I knew that dog, that posture, that familiar tilt of the head, but it couldn't be him, because Buddy was dead, had been for 3 years. I don't remember opening the door. I only remember him stepping inside. Buddy looked exactly the same golden fur, same deep brown eyes, same stupid little bounce in his walk. My throat tightened as I dropped to my knees, my fingers shaking as I ran them through his fur. He felt real, warm, solid, alive. Tears burned in my eyes as he pressed his face into my chest, a small whimper escaping his throat. I buried my face into his fur, inhaling deeply. He even smelled the same, like old leaves and something familiar, something that once meant home. I didn't question it. I didn't stop to think about the impossible, because in that moment, all I knew was that Buddy had come back to me, and I had missed him so damn much. The first sign came the next morning. Buddy didn't eat. At first, I thought he was just adjusting. Maybe he was tired, or maybe he'd found food somewhere else before showing up at my door. But by the third day, I started to worry. I filled his bowl with his favorite kibble, even put some leftover steak in there. He didn't touch it. He just sat by the back door, staring outside, watching, waiting. The second sign came that night. I woke up around 2 a.m. to a strange sound, a slow, raspy breathing. At first, I thought it was Buddy, but as I turned my head, my stomach dropped. He wasn't in his bed. He was sitting in the doorway, staring at me. The moonlight barely reached his face, but his eyes were wrong, not brown, black. And I swear to God, for just a split second, I saw his mouth move. Not in a pant, not in a yawn, but in a whisper. I didn't sleep after that. The next day, I tested something. I held up a mirror. Buddy tilted his head like he always did, his ears perking up in that adorable, familiar way. But his reflection didn't move. His real body shifted, but the mirror image stayed frozen, locked in place. Then, it smiled. I threw the mirror across the room. Buddy didn't react. He just kept staring. I started looking through old photos that night, flipping through albums I hadn't touched since Buddy died. Every picture of him felt like a lie now, like I had been mourning something that had never really left. But then, I found the last picture I ever took of him, a week before he died. I stared at it, my breath catching in my throat, because there, in the background, in the corner of the frame, was something else. A shape, a shadow, standing at the edge of the woods, watching us. I slammed the album shut, my hands clammy with sweat. Then I heard it, scraping, not at the door, not at the windows, from beneath the floorboards. I grabbed a flashlight and a crowbar, my heart pounding as I pried open the wooden panels beneath my feet. Dust and mold filled my nose as I lowered the flashlight into the crawl space. And then, I saw it. A second Buddy, lying in the dirt, his body rotting, his jaw twisted open in a silent scream. His ribs were cracked, his fur was matted with soil, his paws were bloody, torn apart as if he had been clawing to get out. My stomach twisted violently. The thing sitting behind me wasn't Buddy. It never was. A slow, wet growl rumbled from above me. I turned. Buddy, or the thing pretending to be him, was standing at the edge of the crawl space opening, staring down at me. His mouth split open, stretching too wide, his teeth too long, too sharp. His voice slithered out, layered, wrong. "You buried him, but I brought him back." I don't remember running. I don't remember grabbing the gasoline. I only remember the fire. The thing screamed as the flames devoured it, its body twisting, melting, its voice shifting between a growl and something almost human. I stood outside, watching as the house burned. The real Buddy was gone, had been for years. But this thing, this imposter, had worn his skin, had fooled me, had made me believe. It was never Buddy that had come back. It was something else, something that wanted to be let in, something that would try again. I watched my house burn until there was nothing left but a collapsed skeleton of charred wood and rising embers. The thing inside the thing that wore Buddy's skin had stopped screaming long before the fire died. I told myself it was over, that whatever had dug its way into my life, pretending to be my dead dog, was gone. But even as the last embers smoldered, something inside me whispered, "This isn't over." The police came. There were questions, of course. They asked how the fire started, if I had been inside when it happened. I told them what they needed to hear: faulty wiring, a freak accident, a tragedy. They bought it. What else would they believe? That my dead dog had come back and tried to kill me? The insurance paid out, and I moved. I found a quiet place 2 towns over, a small apartment on the 2nd floor of an old brick building. No backyard, no pets allowed. That was fine. I wasn't taking any chances. For the first few weeks, things were normal. I worked, I slept. I ignored the nagging emptiness in my chest that had been there ever since Buddy died, the real Buddy. I started convincing myself that I had imagined it all, that the fire hadn't destroyed a monster, just a house filled with my own delusions. Then the scratching started again. It was past midnight when I heard it, a faint, rhythmic tap, tap, tap against the window. I tried to ignore it at first. I lived on the 2nd floor. It was impossible for anyone to be outside my window, and yet the tapping continued, slow, deliberate, patient. I swallowed hard and forced myself to sit up in bed. The room was bathed in darkness, except for the soft glow of the street lamp outside. My curtains were drawn, but I could see the outline of something pressing against the fabric. A shape, a dog. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The tapping stopped. Then, ever so slowly, the curtain began to shift, as if something on the other side was gently pulling it back. My stomach twisted into a cold, suffocating knot. I wanted to run, to get out of bed, but I couldn't. I could only sit there, frozen, as the curtain peeled away to reveal what waited outside. Buddy, or what looked like Buddy. He was sitting on the fire escape, his golden fur damp and matted, his blackened eyes locked onto mine. His mouth hung open slightly, his tongue dry, too still, as if he had forgotten how to use it. His head tilted in that familiar way, but something about it was too sharp, too exaggerated, like he was mimicking his old mannerisms, but had long forgotten what they actually meant. I opened my mouth to scream. Buddy lifted a paw and placed it against the glass. His lips moved. "Let me in." I didn't remember getting out of bed. One moment I was staring into those dead, glassy eyes. The next I was locking myself in the bathroom, my chest heaving with ragged gasps. My hands were trembling violently, my fingers digging into my scalp as I tried to tell myself this wasn't happening. It wasn't real. It wasn't real. But when I looked down, my stomach lurched. Dirt, under my fingernails, on my sleeves, scattered across the floor. I squeezed my eyes shut. I didn't want to think about what that meant. Then something caught my eye. Something lying on the floor just beyond the sink. A collar. Buddy's old collar. The one he had been wearing when I buried him 3 years ago. It was covered in dried blood. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I sat in the corner of the bathroom, my knees drawn to my chest, listening to the silence. No more tapping, no scratching, nothing. By the time the sun rose, I had convinced myself I had imagined it, that maybe I had a nightmare, a stress-induced hallucination. Maybe I was finally losing my mind. But when I walked out into my apartment, Buddy was sitting in the kitchen, waiting for me. I stopped in the doorway, my heart hammering against my ribs. He looked normal now, clean fur, tail wagging. His eyes were brown again, warm and full of familiarity. But I knew better. I knew what I had seen the night before. He stood up slowly, stepping toward me, his nails clicking softly against the floor. Something was inside him. Something that wasn't Buddy. Something that had been wearing him like a suit. He sat down in front of me and smiled. "I came back for you," he whispered. I should have run, but I didn't. Something deep in my chest, a dark, aching guilt held me in place. I had buried Buddy. I had left him alone in the cold, in the dark, to rot. And now, here he was. I felt my body move on its own, my knees buckling as I collapsed to the floor. My fingers reached out, trembling, brushing against his fur. He was warm. He was real. Tears blurred my vision as I whispered, "I'm sorry." His lips twitched. Not a snarl, not a growl, a smile. And then I felt something wrapping around my wrist. Not paws, fingers. His skin split open. Fur peeled away, revealing something else beneath something that was never a dog, never Buddy, never anything human. And as its long, clawed hands dragged me into the darkness, I realized the truth. Buddy had never come back. Something else had. And now, it terrifies me. The apartment is quiet now. The windows are closed, the doors are locked, but if you listen closely late at night, when the world is still, you can hear the scratching at the door, the faint whimpering of a dog, the soft, patient whisper of a voice that is almost familiar. Let me in. And I don't know what to do now. I'm really in a terrible situation. Well, that was pretty much it. I hope you liked the story till then. Bye-bye.